Happy effing Friday, everybody. Ever loaned someone money once, twice, then suddenly realize you're 5 million deep with one borrower? No? Steven Loewer learned that lesson the hard way. Today, we're talking about concentration risk, indoor pools from busted pipes, and why your best client can become your biggest nightmare. Let's go. Well, everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'm joined by Steven Loewer out of Canada. He's owned hundreds of multifamily units, both buying and selling, more than $200 million in transactions. He's a founder of Lions Den Capital and runs the private mortgage master academy. And I'm super excited for him to join me today. Welcome, Steven.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So how did you end up kind of in this world of capital and multifamily?
Yeah, good question. My parents had some rentals when I was growing up, and so I was always around real estate. So we were, cleaning up after tenants and painting fences and developing basements and all sorts of things. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think that was, kind of just the start of my journey. My mom was super entrepreneurial and super awesome. So I'm one of 7 kids, and very early on she realized, she's like, you know what, I'm never going to be able to afford to put all of my kids through university as much as I would love to. And so she decided, you know what, instead of doing that, what I'm going to try to do is help each of my kids buy a property, buy a house or something. And that way they can live in it while they're in school. They can, get married and live in it. They can rent it out. They can do whatever. But ideally, they'll be able to sell it or refinance it or do something and essentially pay for their education. And so that was kind of the entrepreneurial mindset that my mom had, and I tried to follow in her footsteps as best I could. Unfortunately, she passed in 2002 from cancer. But so that was kind of, how I got started. I think at the peak, my parents had, I want to say like 20 or 22 doors, almost all single family homes. And most of them bought what we would call now creatively, because back then in Alberta, you could essentially take over a loan subject to with no approval. It was called an assumption, but you didn't have to qualify. So you could just go in and cash the mortgage and bingo bango, you're done. So they went in and assumed a ton of mortgages, and my dad is now kicking himself that he didn't keep all of them. He seemed to almost perfectly time the worst times to sell each property.
Oh, man. Yeah, I recognize some of that feeling.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to university and study. So I studied finance. I liked numbers and stuff like that. I initially went into engineering, and after a week, I'm like, nah, these are not my people. And got into finance. So, and when I was coming out again, I still didn't really know what it was that I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be like a stock guy, because they were just essentially glorified salespeople. I didn't want to be an investment banker, because they work like 90 hours a week and it's an insane lifestyle. And so I wanted to figure out how to merge finance and real estate, and that's kind of where I got into the whole financing side. So I was working to become a commercial mortgage broker, loan officer, I think is more the term you guys use in the US. And when I was there, the guys that I was learning from actually had a ton of private lending experience. And so that was really cool. So I was asking them all sorts of questions, because I'd heard about private lending in this mystical world of private capital and things. And so I learned quite a bit. And then unfortunately, the credit crisis happened in 2008, 2009. And they're like, there's nobody lending, there's nobody borrowing, we can't really afford to keep you around. But they introduced me to this really unique fellow that was an apartment building flipper. And so I connected with him and came on. Very small group. Initially, there was 4 of us. And the size of our group kind of fluctuated from 4 up to, I think the biggest it got was maybe 12 people. But essentially, he had built a database of homeowners, multifamily owners, and he just had a system where he was reaching out to them directly, just to basically call them and say, hey, do you think now's a good time to sell? Let's avoid a realtor. Let's, is there some motivation? Blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of my first introduction to direct to seller, which I didn't really even know was a thing. But he hated real estate. He hated owning real estate. And so the minute he bought it, he wanted to get rid of it. And so the goal was basically to buy it, 5 to 10% below market because we're going direct, fix up the rents, fix up the property a little bit, and then sell it for 5 or 10% above market or above what we had paid. So it was building in that kind of 20% gross margin. And in order to do that, because we're borrowing, essentially doing this short term, the goal was kind of 3 to 18 months was the timeline.
Wow.
Because we would,
Fast turn.
no banks wanted to lend to us for short periods of time, so we used primarily private capital. And so my job was essentially everything throughout the process, except I didn't talk to the sellers and I didn't do any property management, but everything else. So it was analyzing the deals, underwriting, um, sourcing the debt, sourcing the capital, debt and equity, doing the whole capital stack.
Some would say that might be the best mix
It was the
of
funnest part. It was the
those.
most cool. Absolutely. And so I learned a ton. And during my time there, yeah, we bought and sold over 750 multifamily units. So that was amazing. So,
That is wild.
and then eventually, there was the owner, the VP who was in charge of the acquisitions, then myself. We're like, hey, let's duplicate this model. Let's go to some other markets. Let's go to Phoenix. Let's go to LA. Let's go to Miami. And the risk averse owner said, you know what, I think that was a really good time to shrink. so,
Bummer.
so I said, I think it might be time for me to move on. So that's when I decided to get out of the multifamily game, and I just focused purely on the lending side. And so I've been running Lions Den Capital since 2015.
Awesome. The house hacking for the kids, that's a really great move that your mom did. So would you say that she's the rich dad?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
I'd actually
that's
thought
great.
about writing a book called Rich Mom, Poor Mom.
Do it. That'd be great.
I think I get sued, but
I mean, it sounds like she was pretty influential in the entrepreneur side of your life.
yeah, absolutely.
I was reading ahead of time, and do you have 7 kids, or she has 7 kids? You have 6 siblings
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
bunch of boys?
Yeah. 5 of them are boys. Exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That would be such a wild household.
Right.
Yeah, I've got 3 daughters and a son, and my wife always says that if it had been the reverse, we might not have 4.
Right. That's probably a fair assessment. Yeah. When I think about, because my 3 oldest brothers all came first, and they're within 5 years of each other, and so I can't imagine having 3 rambunctious boys from the age of like 7 to 2.
The house would be destroyed at all times.
Exactly.
And then feeding them through teenage years would be a mess too.
Yeah.
Have you found that are there fundamental differences between Canada and US for multifamily?
Well, one of the things that you
That's the
guys
word.
call it multifamily, and we call it multifamily. So it's a bit
Yeah,
different.
there we go. It's minor things.
Yeah, there's not a ton of difference. I think the biggest difference that I've noticed would probably be, I mean, the financing is fairly similar. Property management, finding good tenants, all that stuff's pretty similar. Renovations, all that stuff. One of the things I noticed is there's a lot more purpose-built apartment buildings in the U.S. versus Canada. So in any given city, you might find, let's say, 20% of the rental stock is, these buildings that were built through the 60s, through the 80s, maybe into and there's a big gap between like the late 80s and I would say like 98, 2000, where just not a lot of purpose-built rental was built. It was everybody saw just more money building homes for homeowners. And so there
I
wasn't a
see.
lot of so anything that we were buying was essentially in that stock. So the cool thing when I go into the US is there's so much different stuff in so many different markets. And so it's that's quite unique. The other big thing would be the most most borrowers most apartment owners, because they're business owners and they have that business mindset, they're already more accustomed to the idea of creative finance, more so than any homeowner is in Canada. And so if you talk to like a homeowner about seller finance or something like that's completely out of the realm of anything that Canadians do. It's while it's not common in the US, it's much more understood or at least people talk about it. But when you do get into multifamily, it is more common in the US, or sorry, in Canada, but it's still not nearly as common as it is in the US. And so that's one of the things that I enjoy about the US is that, most people either have like seller financing available or seller financing not available. Like they already know that's going to be part of the conversation. Whereas in Canada, it just wouldn't even be on the listing. Like it wouldn't even be.
Do you think that's driven by maybe the tax system? Like if we've got 1031 exchanges, and so they've
Yeah, and that
kind of
that is one of the
figured that, hey,
benefits.
we
So
can maybe work around some of that by doing stuff creatively.
exactly. In Canada, unfortunately, you can. I'm not an accountant, so don't quote me on this. But from what I understand, you can only if you're carrying financing, you can only delay capital gains for up to 5 years. So it's basically they'll allow you to defer that for 20% for 5 years.
Interesting. Are you focused still in Canada, or are you in the US as well now?
Yeah, so I've gotten rid of all my stuff here in Canada so I can focus on buying multis and RV parks and mobile home parks in the US. So that's the
Oh, really?
focus. Yeah. So I've got the lending company in Canada, but everything else I'm doing is in the US.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I didn't know you were doing investment and lending still. Okay. That's very cool. Well, being involved in so many transactions over the years, I imagine there's been some missteps and some things to learn from. What's been the greatest mistake or challenge?
Yeah, my greatest mistake was probably getting over involved with one borrower. And so what had happened was we were introduced to this gentleman who was doing some fix and flips, and we loaned him some money to fix up a house. And and I'm a private lender, so what we do is we usually provide first and or second mortgages to help people with all sorts of situations to get from point A to point B. And so, fixing up a house is pretty normal for us. And while that one was getting listed and getting ready to get sold, bought another one. We're like, okay, yeah, got to move the crews over. Everything's done here. And while he was there, there was one that came up across the street, so we gave him some money for that one. And so very quickly, within probably 3 or 4 months, I think we had over probably just over 2 million out with this guy.
Oof.
Yeah, and he wasn't in a position where he was able to service it, obviously, and so it was always, this is, I'll pay you back when the house sells, right? So sure, we'll let some interest accrue, and yeah, so we continued down that road. A couple of houses sold. One was break even. One made a little bit of money. The next one made quite a bit. And then, so anyway, things were going well. At one point, though, and again, this was during COVID and the market's kind of changing. I think we were into him for just under 5 million total in projects. And and then at some point he was going through some things in his personal life that, went through divorce and a few things. And so his eye was not on the ball. And so unfortunately, um, projects just started to go over timelines, budgets went out of whack. One, there's one house. Oh gosh. There's one house that they had stripped it down to the studs, and the plan was it was a bungalow, but a 1,000 square foot bungalow, or a rambler, I think you guys call it. And the goal was to put a new floor on the top, so to add a second floor. So, which is a great idea. It's an inner city home. Take the 1,000 square foot home and make it a 2,000 square foot home. And
Yeah,
you're
great.
not, you don't have all the costs for repouring the basement, excavation, hooking up to utilities, things like that. And so got all the right permits and everything. And it was a very, very cold January, as often happens in Canada. And apparently somebody didn't shut off the water. So, so the neighbor called and called the renovator and said, "There's water coming out of the basement windows. You might want to come check this out."
Oh,
So the entire basement had filled up about 6, 7, 8 feet until it was coming out of the windows onto the ground.
wow.
Yeah, and in my
Indoor pool.
yeah, exactly right. So he had to get like, and the city wouldn't let him drain it just into the sewer lines and stuff. So he had to get a truck to come out and pump it. And anyway, tons of extra costs and hassle. Luckily, it all dried out. There was no major damage because it was already stripped. It was no big problem, but other than a huge bill to get it pumped. So that was a small example of some of the bumps we ran into along the way. Anyway, so we used his primary residence as additional security through the loans. We did all the right things. The things that we did wrong was we got over involved with one borrower, and so it would have been better had we spread that risk around with some other borrowers. And at the end of the day, we ended up having to go in and finish off a couple of these projects for him. He lost capacity to finish them off,
Mm.
and we didn't trust him any longer to give him the money to go and finish the renovations. And so unfortunately he chose to go and focus on something else, and hopefully everything's working out there well for him. But
Just
um,
up and left.
up and left, yeah. And I think most people in that situation kind of recognize, like, oh, there's not really anything here for me.
How
um
long was that relationship?
it was probably about a 3 to 4 year relationship.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how that works out, right? People are good, they're good, and then they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, and we had some great successes with him. Like, one of the best deals that he did was, and this is something that Pace talks about occasionally. I think you guys call them a novation. And so homeowner has a property, wants to sell it, but it needs renovations, right? Like, it's just super tired. So this renovator went in and said, you've got this property, it's maybe worth about 650 as is. If we put an addition on it and update it and things like that, we can probably get 1.5 for it.
Wow.
And so we came into that deal later, and he basically just needed some more money to finish the renos. And so we again worked with the two and used the house as security, and there was tons of equity. But somehow he managed to drag that one out as well, just for way too long. And in the end, I don't even know if he made any money on that deal. So where he would have made probably 300K, because the timelines just expanded and things. And again, it was just, we weren't following up as well as we should have with him, and he, because of whatever was going on in his life, wasn't keeping on top of his trades and his projects. And so
Hey, what responsibility do you feel like you've got as the person doing the lending? This was private lending, right?
yeah, so
So you're more
when I'm
involved.
helping, when I'm putting my own money out, or when I'm helping put out money for my investors, I tell them, I say, we service what we sell. So if we get you into a deal, we're going to be working on the deal until we can get you out. And so I feel 100% responsible for the deal, not necessarily 100% responsible for the capital. My investors all know that investments have risk, and no investment is without risk. But I feel responsible for that relationship and that specific deal. And it's like, okay, what went wrong with this deal? And so with this one, what was probably the biggest mistake was that we just kept rolling the one deal into the next deal. And so then when they didn't work out, it was uh, what do they call it? A house of cards. It just kind of came crashing down.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
that was tough lesson to learn.
So what was the recovery? I mean, it just had to wash it out.
Mitigate losses as best we can. It's tricky sometimes, because there's always this, you can hold the property in a down market or soft market and say, I could rent it out for a while, and when the market recovers, I could probably get all or most of my money back. And so then it just becomes a game of a question of, business. It's like, okay, do I take the capital that's tied up there now, use that and go and make some other investments and make up that loss,
Yeah.
or do I wait it out? And so sometimes those are difficult decisions to make, and it's hard when you don't have hindsight. Looking back now, it's like, oh, we should have done this, or we should have done that, right? But
Yep. Oh,
so
we should have short-term rented it. Oh, we should have midterm rented it. Oh, we should have whatever. Sober living.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got it.
All of the shiny objects.
Yeah, exactly. We should have turned it into an RV park.
Yeah, exactly. Raise the whole thing.
You got it.
All right. And so what are you going to do? What did you do differently from then on?
Well, one of the things we made sure that we're not doing is getting too deep into any number of projects with one particular borrower. And so yeah, we haven't had that problem. We've made sure that, oh, if you want to get ahead of yourself, you can do that maybe with a different lender. That's not going to be us.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has that been frustrating at all with someone who's like just really doing great? You're like, oh, we could lean into this guy and he could
Yeah,
really
I haven't
accelerate.
I haven't run across it quite yet. There's a lot of competition in the market, and so It's always hard to know like who we're not seeing those deals from, right? And so I'd love to say that I've got like 10 more of those guys and they're all just, doing this, doing that. We're a pretty small shop, and so we don't do that much volume. And so we're more boutique, right? So we find really specific deals that work really well for our investors and go from there. So
And so all of that lending is in Canada,
that's right.
but you are also investing in mobile home parks and multifamily in the States.
Yeah, you got it.
And that's just you personally or
Yes.
as a team.
Yeah. So when I joined Sub 2, the goal was to acquire some long-term rentals in the US to build, as Pace says, to build some long-term, well, some tomorrow money. The lending that we do brings me some today money, kind of like wholesaling, right? You do a deal and it's like, all right, well, I made some money, but now I got to go get another deal.
Yeah.
So that's some today money. Tomorrow money, and then forever money. And so the tomorrow money is a little bit of all the other stuff I do in between, and then the forever money is what I'm looking for from long-term rentals in the US. So after joining Sub 2 and then chasing a bunch of shiny pennies, and I finally decided, you know what? I have all this knowledge and experience in multifamily. I should probably just focus on multifamily.
Yeah.
And
Makes a lot of
so,
sense.
yeah, so I joined an Orbit team. I co-lead an Orbit team in the Sub 2 community, and our focus is multifamily. And so it's actually amazing how so Heidi she's an attorney in Minnesota. She runs the team, and it's amazing how she's been able to pull everybody together to work harmoniously on one goal and one vision. And so it's pretty cool just to work next to her and see how that operates and how that works, and to see the community come together and go, I want to learn, how do I add some value? How do I get involved in this and this? And so it's been super cool. And so because my challenge has been in the US is like, I've got all this knowledge, background, experience, but I don't have the right connections. Like I don't have, a mortgage broker or a commercial broker that I can just call and say, hey, what about this loan? And
Yeah.
so, I wanted to work with some people that are doing it, that are in the industry, that I can learn from, work with, find those right people. And multifamily is a team sport, right? It's hard to take down a 50-unit building by yourself. And so, yeah, it's been super valuable just being part of this team and connecting with everybody and working together. We've got a bunch of LOIs out. We've had some goals to take some properties down before the end of the year. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. We're optimistic. We've got some good things in the pipeline. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I had Heidi on a couple months ago, I think. I'll have to link to her in the description below.
perfect.
Awesome. I
Great.
don't think I've ever said that before. All right. So if people wanted to follow along and keep up to date with what you're doing, where should they go?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram. I've got my Instagram handle here at Steven Loewer. Find me on Facebook, and then yeah, just reach out if you want to do some bird dogging or you want to join the Orbit team. If you've got some capital that you want to put into a project. I also recently been working with Caleb Christopher, who's launched his title company in Colorado. So
Yeah.
I'm helping him do that, and I'm the investor relations on that deal. So that's been pretty fun. So yeah, we got lots of things going on and lots of exciting things that people can participate in different ways, whether it's bird dogging, or if they got capital to put to use, or they want to learn and be more involved in the multifamily side. So lots of things.
And how about the academy?
Yeah, the Private Mortgage Mastery Academy. What I it's challenging because I've spoken to so many different people. I'm on probably 10 networking calls with different people in the community each week, and hearing different feedback and what people have been doing. Like, hey, I did this deal, or I loaned out some money, but I'm not going to get any of it back. I lost it all. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? And so I've
Yeah.
heard it so
It's
many
not
times from
uncommon.
different people, whether it's 50K or 100K. One gentleman, he was a young guy, 123,000. Another older gentleman, 400,000. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to get any of that back. And I'm like, there's something wrong here. And so I started the
Hmm.
Private Mortgage Mastery Academy because I'm just like, I have all this knowledge and expertise that I want to teach people so that they don't continue to make these same mistakes. Like lending
Yeah.
money should be much less risky than the guy that's buying the property. Like you shouldn't be tying your outcomes to him, right? You should be secured on the real estate and you should know and understand your exit. And so this is what we teach at the Private Mortgage Mastery Academy is how to do that, how to underwrite deals safely, how to look for red flags, how to not get into trouble like I did in chasing one borrower, um, how to price a deal properly, how to, where to find deals, all sorts of stuff. So that's been my goal. And I think, I mean, there's really only so many places where you can learn this type of stuff. Like if you want to learn how to invest in the stock market, there's tons of books, there's tons of videos, there's tons of gurus, there's tons of professionals that you can, go out and give your money to. If you want to have some real estate exposure and not be a landlord, it's really tough to learn how to lend out your money. And so it's this really unique kind of special area where whether it's retirement funds or cash or a lot of my investors have successful businesses, and so they've got capital that's tied up in their corporation that they just, hey, this is sitting idle, I'd like to use it, how can I can lend it out for 12 months. Oh, that's perfect, right? So and the nice thing that I love about that is that it's not like you're investing in a property for 5, 10, 15 years. All you have to do is look out 12 months and say, okay, I can get a decent sense of what's happening in the market over the next 12 months. And so, and then when my money comes back, I get to reassess the market again and say, okay, now what do I want to do? What do I feel comfortable with? And so that's what I
Yeah.
love about that. And so I've got a ton of my money tied up in private lending, and we manage about 25 million of assets total for me and my investors. And yeah, we appreciate everybody's faith and trust in us. Obviously, we've done repeated business with a number of our investors, and that they get used to the paychecks. They're like, oh man, this is amazing. I've got 500 grand coming back. How do I get this back out the door right away, right?
Right.
And one of my bigger investors, like, I'll just give you this example. So it's a really nice older couple. They worked their butts off their whole lives. Basically had a tire shop and a chain tire shop, and eventually they were able to buy the building where they had their tire shop, and worked and worked. And he said, there was 3 or 4 times where like we almost went under, like we couldn't make payroll. We were scrimping and saving, trying to get by. And eventually they found a good buyer for the business and a good buyer for the real estate. And now they're set. They've got all this cash, but they don't know what to do with the cash. So we've put the cash to work for them, and now they're like, oh man, we could have retired 10 years early if we'd have known about this. Like this is so much easier. Like we're just cashing checks each month, and so they're clearing like between 35 and $40,000 a month just doing nothing,
Wonderful.
just
That's
cashing checks.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I just love about this business, and yeah, got lots of fun stuff going on. So I'd love to connect with anybody that wants to chat or learn more. If you're interested in learning about how to lend out your money or your friends and family money, then yeah, happy to connect.
Where can they find the Academy?
So the website for the Academy is at stevenloewer.com. It's really original.
Hey, it's pretty unique.
There you go. There's only a
If
handful.
you've got the .com for it, I mean, it means you're the only one in the world. So that's how that works.
There you go. Awesome.
All right, Steven. Well, thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.